Side 4. The Departing of Arthur. After Sir Galahad, the son of Lancelot, had come to Camelot and achieved the quest of the Holy Side 4. The Departing of Arthur. After Sir Galahad, the son of Lancelot, had come to Camelot and achieved the quest of the Holy Grail, and been transported to heaven at the moment of its fulfillment, all those knights who were left alive returned to Camelot. King Arthur rejoiced greatly to see them sitting once more about the Round Table, but he was sad also, for he knew that the time was drawing near when the realm of Logres would be lost again in the darkness. For there was a change after the quest was over. Many seats stood empty at the Round Table, and now no new names grew in letters of gold upon these seats, for there were no new knights to take the places of those who were dead. Now, too, the evil, which had never quite been rooted out of Logres, began to stir once more, and in a little the fellowship and harmony of his court was to be broken. Now that Sir Galahad was dead, Sir Lancelot was once more the greatest knight in Logres, and for a little time he was the noblest too, for he remembered how he had failed to achieve the Holy Grail by reason of his sinful love for Queen Guinevere. And the Queen noticed that Lancelot avoided her now, and rode away from Camelot on every quest that offered. And one day she sent for him and said, "Sir Lancelot, I see and feel daily that your love for me grows less, and you ride ever to help damsels and gentlewomen. Have you perhaps found one of them who is dearer to your heart than I am?" "Ah, madam," said Lancelot sadly, "I love you only, and no other woman in all the world. But for many reasons I strive to flee your presence, not least because I think of your good name. For there are those about the court who wait only some such chance as this to bring sorrow to King Arthur, and shame and dissension to the whole realm of Logres." Then Queen Guinevere was angry with Sir Lancelot and cried, "These are all lies. And now I understand your falsehood clearly enough. You are tired of me, and you have found someone else. Therefore go hence, and never come near me again." In great sadness, Sir Lancelot took his horse and rode into the forests. But in a little while Queen Guinevere was sorry, and wished very much for Lancelot to return. On that very same day there came to King Arthur's court a knight called Sir Arry, carried in a litter, with 3 grievous wounds in his head which no man could heal. For many years Sir Arry had been in great pain, for no doctors could cure him, and at last his mother and his sister had set out on pilgrimage to take him into all the courts of Europe to see if there was any man who could help. And at length they had come to Britain, to the court at Camelot, and as they drew near they met with the Lady Nimue, who came with them to King Arthur and said, "Lord King, this man Sir Arry may be cured only by the touch of the best knight in the world." "If any man may heal Sir Arry," answered King Arthur, "surely it shall be one of my court, for there are none better in all this land, unless it be the good knight Sir Percival, who is king now in Carbonek with his Queen Blanchefleur. And to encourage all men, I myself will lay hands upon him first, though I know that I am not worthy to heal him, and then all my subject kings, dukes, earls, and knights shall try." Then all the fellowship of the Round Table, 110 of them, laid hands in turn upon Sir Arry, but none might heal him. "Where is Sir Lancelot of the Lake?" asked King Arthur then. "For if he cannot do this thing, then surely there is no knight worthy enough." And while they stood speaking of these things, Lancelot came riding back to Camelot. Arthur told him what had chanced, and begged him to attempt the cure of Sir Arry. "Not so," exclaimed Sir Lancelot. "It were but evil pride in me to think that I might succeed where so many noble knights have failed." "You shall not choose," said King Arthur, "for I lay my command upon you." "Then, my most noble lord," answered Lancelot, "I will not disobey you." So Lancelot knelt down beside Sir Arry, and when he had prayed a while, he laid his hands on the 3 cruel wounds. And at once Sir Urry was as whole and as well as if he had never been wounded at all. All the knights, and King Arthur among them, shouted aloud for joy, and thanked God for his mercy. But Lancelot wept as if he were a little child that had been beaten. Then King Arthur grew silent too, for he remembered how, upon the day when he first came to Camelot, Lancelot had healed a wounded knight in the very same way, and how Nimue, the Lady of the Lake of Avalon, had prophesied that Lancelot would do just such another deed, his very last before the passing of Logres. Now it so happened that one day soon thereafter, Queen Guinevere came up to Sir Lancelot and said, "Come to me in my garden at sundown, for I would meet with you." It chanced that Agravain, Sir Gawain's brother, heard her words. He was one of the wicked and disloyal knights who hated the queen and were jealous of Sir Lancelot's fame and renown. Agravain told Sir Mordred, his cousin, Queen Morgana le Fay's son, who was the evilest knight of all, hating all things good as his mother had done, and seeking ever to bring shame and ruin upon King Arthur and the whole realm of Logres. Mordred now saw his chance, and he and Agravain hid themselves in the queen's garden that evening when the sun was casting long shadows under the apple trees, and presently she came, walking among the flowers, more fair than the fairest rose in the world. Guinevere walked in the garden alone for a while, and then Sir Lancelot came, the goodliest knight in the world. He knelt before Queen Guinevere, and she asked his forgiveness for her harsh words. "Oh, Lancelot, Lancelot," she said softly, "since the first day that you came to Camelot, when I was little more than a girl, the bride of King Arthur, I saw you and loved you." "I loved you on that day also," said Lancelot, "and all these years I have striven against that love, but in vain." "Lancelot," said Guinevere, her voice trembling, "I wish above all things in the world that you would be my lord and my love, even though it must be in secret. I would that you might come and visit me secretly in my room this evening." "My lady and my love," said Lancelot in a strained voice, "wish you truly that with all your heart?" "Yes, truly," answered Guinevere. "Then, for your love it shall be so," cried Lancelot. Guinevere drew near to him and kissed him on the lips. Then she turned and glided away through the twilight, passing amidst the flowers from which all the colors had gone, leaving them gray in the dying light. But Lancelot stood quite still with the last sunbeam on his face, and he trembled from head to foot, and sighed with joy as he remembered Guinevere's kiss. Presently, he also turned and went out of the garden in the gathering darkness. "And now," said Sir Mordred, "my time has come. These two have given the whole realm of Logres into my hands." And the look in his eyes was not good to see, as he and Agravain stepped out into the night. In an upper room of the castle of Camelot that same evening, while the candlelight threw black, flickering shadows on the bare stone walls, Sir Agravain spoke with Sir Gawain, his brother, and Mordred stood near the door, his dark eyes shining strangely. "Brother Agravain," said Sir Gawain, much moved, "I pray you and charge you, speak no more to me of such matters, for be assured that I will have no share in this business." "I marvel that you can let this shame be," cried Agravain, his weak face working nervously. "We all know that Lancelot loves the queen, and would bring shame upon King Arthur and all the realm of Logres if he could. We have but to tell King Arthur, and this night Lancelot may be taken in the queen's chamber and put to death for treason." "If you are afraid to speak," said Mordred quietly to Agravain, "then I will go alone to the king." "That I can well believe," said Gawain, "for you, sir, are ever ready to stir up any unhappiness. But you, my brother, think before you do this thing of what will come of it. Whatever may happen," cried Agravain, "I will tell the king." "Alas," said Sir Gawain sadly, "now is this holy realm of Logres about to be destroyed, and the noble fellowship of the Round Table broken by civil war." But Agravain and Mordred went from the room and found King Arthur. "Take 12 knights and do what must be done," said King Arthur when he had heard all the tale. "But woe to you if you have come to me with lies and slanders in your mouths, for this is the saddest night's work that ever has been in this land." Then the two conspirators went to choose their followers. But some hours later Sir Gawain found King Arthur sitting all alone in the great empty hall in his place at the Round Table, with the tears running from his eyes and trickling unheeded through his grey beard and onto his hands. Sir Lancelot sat up late in his room with Sir Bors, and at last he rose to his feet and said, "I bid you good night, fair cousin. I go to speak with the Queen." "Sir," said Bors, "I counsel you not to go this night." "Why not?" asked Lancelot. "I fear Sir Mordred," answered Bors, "for he and Sir Agravain are ever about to do you shame and bring ruin upon us all." "Have no fear," said Lancelot. "I shall go swiftly and silently, and return at once." "God speed you well," said Sir Bors, "and bring you safely back again." Then Lancelot took his sword under his arm, wrapped his long furred gown about him, and went through the dark castle to Queen Guinevere's room. And they had not been together for many minutes, when Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain, with their 12 knights, came to the door and cried, "You traitor, Sir Lancelot, now are you caught!" This they shouted with a loud voice so that all the castle might hear. "Alas," sobbed Queen Guinevere, "now are we both betrayed." "Madam," said Lancelot, "is there any armor here that I can put on? If so, these cravens shall not take me easily." "Alas, no," said Guinevere. "I have no armor, nor a helmet, nor even a shield. Wherefore I fear that our long love is come to a sad end." But Lancelot turned to the door and shouted, "Fair lords, cease from all this noise, and I will open the door quietly." "Come quickly, you traitor knight," they shouted back. "If you yield yourself quietly, we will take you prisoner and bring you before King Arthur." Then Lancelot wound his cloak about his arm, unbarred the door with his left hand, and opened it a little way. Immediately a knight, his name was Sir Colgrevance, rushed forward, striking at Lancelot with all his might. But Lancelot warded the blow with the thick folds of his cloak, and struck Sir Colgrevance such a stroke on the head that he fell down and never moved again. Swiftly Lancelot dragged him into the room and barred the door once more. Then, with the Queen's help, he stripped the armor from the dead man and put it on himself. "Traitor knight! Come out of the Queen's room!" shouted Sir Agravain, beating on the door. "Cease your noise, I'm coming," replied Lancelot. "I advise you, Sir Agravain, to run away and hide." Then Lancelot flung wide the door and stood there a moment, as fine a knight as ever this world has seen. Next moment he was among them, and the swords flashed like lightning among dark clouds. At the first stroke he slew Sir Agravain, and then he laid about him with such blows that before long all his foes lay dead on the ground, except for Sir Mordred, who ran wounded from the place. "I go now," shouted Lancelot to the Queen, "but if you are in any danger for this night's work, be assured that while I am a living man, I will rescue you." Then Lancelot rode away in haste from Camelot, and with him went Sir Bors and Sir Lionel and many another knight, and they hid themselves in the forest nearby and waited to see what would happen. Meanwhile Sir Mordred came, all wounded, to Arthur, where he sat with Gawain in the great hall. "How comes this to be?" asked the king. "Did you not take him in the queen's chamber?" "He was there, indeed," gasped Mordred, "and all unarmed. But he slew first Sir Colgrevance, armed himself in his armor, and killed all those who came against him, except for me, who escaped thus wounded." "Ah," said the king sadly, "he is indeed a marvelous knight. Alas, that ever Sir Lancelot should be against me, for now I am sure that the noble fellowship of the Round Table is broken forever, for many knights will side with him." "What of the queen?" asked Mordred. "She is guilty of high treason, and by the law she must die at the stake." Then Arthur covered his face in his hands and wept. "The queen must die, according to the law," he said. "And if Lancelot comes here again, he shall suffer a shameful death." "Then God forbid that ever I be by to see it," exclaimed Gawain. "Yet he slew your brother Agravain," said King Arthur. "Often I warned Agravain," answered Sir Gawain, "for I knew what his plots would bring him to. Moreover, he was one of 14 armed knights attacking a man unarmed. Therefore, I pardon Sir Lancelot his death. Make you ready in the morning to lead my queen to the fire," said King Arthur. "Not so, my most noble king," cried Gawain. "It shall never be said that I was of your counsel for her death." "Then," said the king, "call before me your brothers, Sir Gaheris and Sir Gareth." And when they were come, King Arthur gave them his commands. "Sir," they answered, "what you bid us, that we will do. Nevertheless, it is sorely against our will, and we will go there unarmed and dressed in robes of mourning." "Then make you ready," cried the king, "for the hour has come." "Alas," said Sir Gawain, "that ever I should live to see this day." So Guinevere was led to the stake, dressed only in her smock, and many followed her in mourning garments. But Sir Mordred was there fully armed, and with him a band of knights armed also. But when the torch was already lit, suddenly Sir Lancelot came with his followers, cut his way to the stake, slaying many knights as he went, and carried off Queen Guinevere. But without knowing it, Lancelot killed both Gaheris and Gareth, who stood near the stake unarmed and in mourning costume. Then Sir Lancelot and all those who favoured his cause rode away into his own lands of Gwynedd in North Wales, and fortified themselves strongly in his castle of Joyous Gard. Now, indeed, the realm of Logres was broken, for Britain was split with civil war, and there was hatred where of old love and faith had been. When his anger passed, King Arthur repented sorely that he had condemned Queen Guinevere to the flames so speedily, and rejoiced that Lancelot had saved her. But now the lifelong friendship between Gawain and Lancelot was ended, and a sudden hatred and a desire for revenge grew in its place. "I swear before God that I will never rest," cried Sir Gawain, "until Lancelot and I meet face to face and one of us is slain. For never can I forgive him for slaying my dear brothers Gaheris and Gareth, slaughtering them unarmed and defenseless. And you, my uncle, I charge by the sacred order of knighthood, and as you are true king of this land, to make war forthwith against Sir Lancelot, both to avenge my brothers and to rescue your queen." All the knights who remained faithful to him also begged King Arthur to make war, and at length he gathered together his forces and marched north until he came to Joyous Gard and laid siege to it. After 15 weeks of fruitless siege, it chanced on a day that Sir Lancelot spoke from the gate tower with King Arthur and Sir Gawain. "My lords both," he said, "you cannot take this castle." "Come forth then," cried King Arthur, and fight with me in single combat. God forbid, said Lancelot, that ever I should fight with the most noble king of all time, he moreover that made me a knight. Now fie upon your fair language, cried the king. Know that I am now your mortal foe, and ever will be, for you have robbed me of my wife, slain my knights, and broken this goodly realm of Logres. Then Lancelot begged King Arthur to make peace, offering to give up Queen Guinevere and defend her innocence against all her accusers, and the king might have listened to him, had not Sir Gawain persuaded him against making any truce with Lancelot. And on the next day Lancelot led his men suddenly out of the castle, for he was angered at length by the cruel taunts Sir Gawain had heaped upon him the day before, and a terrible battle ensued. In it, Sir Gawain, seeking for Lancelot, struck down Sir Lionel and slew him. But Sir Bors smote King Arthur to the earth, and stood over him with drawn sword, crying to Lancelot, Sir, shall I make an end of this war at a single stroke? But Lancelot answered, Strike not, or I will slay you myself, for I will never see our most noble lord King Arthur slain or shamed by any man. And then Sir Lancelot sprang down from his horse, and very tenderly helped King Arthur to his feet, and so onto his own horse, saying as he did so, My dear Lord King, for God's sake make an end of this war. Take back your queen with all honor, and I will promise to leave this land of Britain, and never return until you may need me. Then King Arthur was deeply moved, thinking of the great courtesy of Sir Lancelot, and of all the noble deeds he had done in the past, and in spite of all that Sir Gawain could do, he made peace with Lancelot. And when all was agreed, Lancelot came unarmed before the king, leading Queen Guinevere by the hand, and he said, My most noble lord, I bring hither your queen. And if there is any knight who dares say that she is false to you, then I will fight with him to the death. Whatever I have done or sought to do, this lady is innocent. But you have listened to liars and quarrel makers. And as he said this, he turned and looked towards Sir Mordred, and by their evil mischief-making, the goodly fellowship of the Round Table is broken in sunder. The king may do as he will, broke in Sir Gawain, but never while we live shall I make peace with you. For you slew my dear brother Sir Gareth, and Sir Gaheris, and Sir Agravain also. You know well that I love no man better than Sir Gareth, said Lancelot, and all my life I shall lament that I slew him, not knowing what I did. And now I must bid farewell to this dear land, and to the holy realm of Logres, and go overseas into Armorica, in the land of France. Be sure that in time I shall follow you there, cried Sir Gawain. Peace reigned in Britain for a little while after this, but it was a broken and a troubled peace. For ever Sir Gawain brooded on his brother's deaths, and ever Sir Mordred stirred up hatred against Sir Lancelot, and at length so many knights sided with Sir Gawain that Arthur was forced to declare war on Sir Lancelot, and he gathered together a great army and went into France, leaving Mordred to rule Britain while he was away. They marched into Armorica to the castle of Benwick, where Lancelot had taken up his abode, and they remained there for a long while. And 3 times did Lancelot and Gawain fight together, and each time Lancelot overcame Gawain and wounded him almost to death. But it seemed now that Gawain was mad, for even when he lay desperately wounded, he ceased not to cry, Traitor knight, coward! When I am whole again, I will do battle with you once more, for never will I rest until one of us is slain. Meanwhile, in Britain, Sir Mordred continued with his plots, and when he had won enough knights to his side, he announced that King Arthur had been killed in the French wars, and he persuaded the people to choose him as their king, and even had himself crowned at Canterbury. Then he seized Queen Guinevere and tried to force her to marry him, but she managed to escape from him and came to London. Thence she sent messengers to find King Arthur, and meanwhile she and those who remained faithful to her retreated into the Tower of London and fortified it. Presently Sir Mordred came and tried to force his way into it, but it was too strong. He tried to persuade Queen Guinevere to come out, but she answered him bravely, "I would rather die by mine own hand than be wife to you." Queen Guinevere's messenger reached King Arthur, and swiftly he marched to the sea coast with all his men and set sail for England. But Mordred was waiting for him at Dover, and a terrible battle had to be fought before he and his men could land. At length, however, they were all ashore, and then they charged the rebels and sent them flying over the downs, Sir Mordred leading the flight. When the battle was over, King Arthur found Sir Gawain lying mortally wounded, for the last wound which Sir Lancelot had given him had broken out afresh. "Alas, my beloved nephew," said King Arthur, kneeling beside him, "here now you lie, dying, the man whom I loved best in all the world. And now all my joy is gone, for you and Lancelot I loved best of all my knights, and I have lost you both." "Ah, my dear lord," said Gawain, "all this is my doing. Oh, I have been mad of late, mad with wicked pride and anger. If the noble Sir Lancelot had been with you, this war would never have come about. I forgive him now. Would that I had forgiven him sooner." King Arthur and his army were encamped upon the plain of Camlan not many days later, and scarcely a mile away Mordred waited for him with a great gathering of knights and men-at-arms who had thrown in their lot with him, choosing rather his easy and lawless rule than the high service of Arthur, the good king of Logres. That night Arthur could not sleep, for he knew that on the morrow there would be a great battle in which many more of his knights would fall, and he feared that this was the last of all his battles, which Merlin had foretold, when the realm of Logres would pass into darkness. For already the Saxons, hearing of the strife and civil war, were pouring into Britain from the north and the east, for the first time since the Battle of Mount Badon 21 years before. And now there was no fellowship of the Round Table ready to ride behind King Arthur at a moment's notice and drive out the barbarians wherever they might chance to land. Never since that day in any Christian land was there seen a sadder or more dreadful battle than that which took place the following day. There was rushing and riding and striking, and many a grim wound was given and many a deadly stroke, and ever King Arthur rode in the heart of the battle doing mighty deeds, and this time Mordred fought well also and did not think of flight, but every man there fought only to kill. And thus the battle lasted through all that long day, and never ceased until all those noble knights were laid upon the cold earth. The evening fell, dark and ominous, and the dreadful hush of death spread over the battlefield, and King Arthur wept to see all his people slain. For he looked about him and could see only two of all his knights left alive, Sir Lucan and Sir Bedivere, and both of these were sorely wounded. "Oh, God!" cried King Arthur, "what has become of all my noble knights? Alas, that I ever should see this doleful day! But now I know that the end has come. Yet I would that I could find that traitor Sir Mordred, the cause of all this sorrow and destruction." Then, as King Arthur looked about him, suddenly he saw Sir Mordred, who stood leaning upon his sword among great heaps of dead men. "Now give me my spear," said King Arthur to Sir Lucan, "for yonder I see the traitor." Then the king took his spear in both his hands and ran towards Sir Mordred, shouting, "Traitor, now is your death upon you!" And when Mordred saw King Arthur, he ran at him with drawn sword. But the king smote Sir Mordred under the shield with a feint of his spear and ran him through the body. But when Mordred felt that he had his death wound, in his hatred and fury he thrust himself forward upon the spear, and gripping his sword in both hands, smote King Arthur upon the head so hard that it cut through the helmet and deep into the head beneath. Then Sir Mordred fell to the ground and died, screaming. But King Arthur fell without a sound, and Sir Lucan and Sir Bedivere came to him and raised him with difficulty between them. And so, by gradual stages, for they were both sorely wounded, they carried him to a little deserted chapel, not far from the mysterious sea, where the mist lay red like blood in the last rays of the setting sun. And then Sir Lucan fell down and died, for the strain of lifting was more than he could stand, with a mortal wound already tearing his vitals. "Alas," said the king, who had recovered from his swoon, "this is a heavy sight, to see this noble knight die for my sake, for he had more need of help than I had." And Sir Bedivere knelt by Sir Lucan and wept, for the two were brothers and had loved each other dearly. The sun had sunk, and now the moon flooded the field of battle with cold white radiance and grim shadows, and the mysterious waters were veiled in long bars of silver mist. Then King Arthur said to Sir Bedivere, "Now leave your weeping and mourning, gentle knight, for it is of no avail, and my time is short. But now, while yet I am with you, you may do me one last service. Take my good sword Excalibur, and go up over yonder ridge, and there you will come to a dark lake in the mountain pass. And when you come there, I charge you to throw my sword into that water, and come back and tell me what you saw." "My lord," answered Sir Bedivere, "your commandment shall be done, and I will bring you word at once of what I see." So Sir Bedivere departed, carrying the sword Excalibur. And as he went, he looked at the sword, admired the precious jewels in the handle, and said to himself, "If I throw this valuable sword into the water, no good will come of it, only harm and loss." So when he came to the dark lake in the mountain pass, he hid the sword amongst the rushes, and hastened back to King Arthur, saying that he had thrown it into the water. "And what saw you there?" asked King Arthur. "Sir," answered Sir Bedivere, "I saw nothing but the wind stirring the dark waters of the lake." "Then you do not speak the truth," said King Arthur. "Therefore go quickly and throw the sword far out into the lake." So Sir Bedivere returned again and took the sword in his hand. But again he thought what a shame it was to throw away such a noble sword, so he hid it once more and returned to the king. "What saw you there?" asked King Arthur. "Sir," answered Bedivere, "I saw nothing but the dark waters stirred by the moaning wind." "Ah, traitor and liar!" cried King Arthur. "Now you have betrayed me twice. Who would think that I had loved you so well, and that you had been so noble a knight of the Round Table, when now you would betray your king for the value of this sword? Go again swiftly and do my bidding, for this long waiting puts me in danger of my life, and I grow cold in this chill night air." Then Sir Bedivere was ashamed, and he ran swiftly over the brow of the hill to the dark lake in the pass of the mountains. He came to the waterside, took the sword in his hands, and flung it as far out from the shore as he could. And as the blade flashed away in the moonlight, there came a hand and an arm up out of the dark waters. the arm clothed in shining white samite, mysterious and wonderful, and caught the sword by the hilt. 3 times it brandished the sword on high, and then vanished with it beneath the water, and the lake grew dark and still once more. So Sir Bedivere came back to the king and told him what he had seen. "Now help me hence," said King Arthur, "for I greatly fear that I have tarried here too long." Then Sir Bedivere supported the king down the grassy slope, where the dew glimmered like magic diamonds in the moonlight, and they came to the shore of the mysterious sea. And then out of the white mist came a barge as if to meet them, and in it were many fair ladies, all veiled in black, and among them was Nimue, the lady of the lake, and the lady of the Isle of Avalon was there also, and Queen Morgana le Fay, Arthur's sister. And a sad, low cry rose from them when they saw King Arthur. "Now place me in the barge," said King Arthur to Sir Bedivere. And so he did as he was commanded, and the 3 ladies received him tenderly, and laid him down with his head resting in the lap of the lady of the Isle of Avalon. And then Queen Morgana le Fay, who knelt at his feet, wept softly and said, "Ah, my dear brother, why have you tarried so long from us? Alas, the wound in your head has caught over much cold." Then the barge moved slowly out from the land, and Sir Bedivere stood alone upon the shore and cried aloud, "Ah, my dear lord King Arthur, what shall become of me now that you go and leave me here alone?" "Comfort yourself," answered King Arthur, "and do as best you may, for you remain to bear word of me to those who are yet alive. For I must go into the Vale of Avalon, there to be healed of my grievous wound. But be you sure that I will come again when the land of Britain has need of me, and the realm of Logres shall rise once more out of the darkness. But if you hear never more of me, pray for my soul." Then the barge floated away into the mist and was lost to sight. But a strange low cry of mourning came over the waters, until the sadness passed from it, and it was lost in a quiet whisper beyond the distance. This audiobook was produced and published by Penguin Books Limited.